All right, what is up, everybody? So, I just wanted to talk about the Deep Archimedea game mode a little bit. It's been out a couple weeks. I've done both weeks so far. I think overall, I think it's pretty cool. I think some things maybe could change a little bit. I hope they don't nerf it too much. Because I think the probably the most obvious thing for everyone is the difficulty. Pablo said that they wanted to make a game mode that really challenged end game players, and if that's what they were going for, I think that they definitely achieved that. Um, maybe not necessarily challenging endgame players as much as this is probably the first litmus test we've had as to what an endgame player in Warframe is. And I guess this is D's definition. So there's some other difficult content, right? Like there's Archon hunts, there's Profit Taker is like kind of hard. Eidolons. You have the new boss, like the 60i Steel Path Murmur boss. So the thing with all of those pieces of content, though, is that you can basically run like that's perfect timing. So if we look in the background here, we have a Revenant. So you can basically just run Revenant and your favorite Incarnate weapon and clear all of that content. Maybe not Eidolons. Eidolons like require a bit of a more specified loadout. And then one of the reasons why I always liked Profit Taker, I thought Profit Taker was such a cool boss, is that you really needed to craft like a loadout to do Profit Taker efficiently. So I always really enjoyed doing that boss. Now, one thing that people are a little annoyed with Deep Archimedea is the whole research point system and the fact that your loadout is part of that. So last week I did all 37 research points. Well, I did the normal mode, and then I did all 37 research points. And that was this week. So the 50 Vosphor reward at 37 research points. This is like literally nothing. Like you can do like one Steel Path mission and get the arcanes off of the acolytes and or like two like Steel Path missions and you'll get 50 Vosphor, right? It's like this is literally nothing. So this is kind of a freebie, right? Like if you like really get a good loadout and you don't care about any of the modifiers you get, sure, you can do all of them. But I was like, you know what? I already did 37 last week. I already got the eyeball Sumdali for my landing craft. Really don't feel like dealing with the energy exhaustion thing. So I dropped this week. So I got Kullervo. I used Boltor, Cycron, mostly the Prisma Oma because I had Kullervo, so obviously a very melee focused frame. Now, one thing I will say, I know there's been a lot of contention um, from having your loadouts be part of the research point system, and I've kind of like gone back and forth on that. I think it is okay. Um, I think DE was really trying to find a way to like. I mean, Archon hunts, right? Like, let me just go pull up let me go to my arsenal and pull up my Archon hunt build. Oh my God, shocking! It's Revenant with a bunch of Incarnate weapons. It's like this loadout can basically do all of the difficult content in the game without blinking. Like I have a God roll burst in Prime Riven. Revenant makes you immortal. Like you literally don't care. Like this loadout can do anything. Besides like Profit Taker, where you need like specific elements and stuff. So I think they were really trying to avoid everyone just using Revenant, right? So if you drop, let's say you want to use Revenant and your favorite Incarnate weapon, and you don't get those in your picks here, well, that's going to drop you down. So if you drop two of your loadout slots, that'll take you to 31. So you're basically guaranteed to miss out on a Tau Forged Archon Shard or one of the. I think only the legendary arcanes are in this mode. So you're basically guaranteed missing out on a legendary melee arcane or a Tau Forged Archon Shard. Both are really good. I mean, that's basically the whole reason of doing this game mode, right? You're trying to get the legendary melee arcanes, which are like absolutely ridiculously expensive. Like, I think melee duplicate is like the same price as arcane energize right now. It's absolutely insane how expensive that is. Mostly due to its rarity and because it's new. It's also a good. It's also pretty good. So, and then obviously Tau Forged Archon shards are really awesome. Those can really amplify certain builds. So this reward is really good. This Phosphor reward, literally nothing. This is meaningless. Do this one time. Do all the research points one time to get like the achievement or like the Sumdali or whatever, and then just shoot for 34. But this reward is really good. So if you really want to run like Revenant and like your favorite weapon, you're going to have to use all the modifiers and you're still only going to get the 31 point reward. So, and I think that's like kind of okay. Because I one thing I was thinking of is like, well, what if they went like the sortie slash Archon hunt route, where rather than like your reward being determined by the loadout you use, you just get like some kind of buff, right? Like you get like plus frame strength, or they could even make it really crazy, like 200% duration for like a frame or something. But then the more I thought about it, and like I talked to some people, and like just like my own Archon Hunt loadout, like it literally does not matter what bonuses the Archon Hunt mission gave me, I would still just use my Revenant Prime and Burstin Prime and Karnan. Like it would the bonuses would have to be like comically huge, like plus 1,000% strength, and then I would like probably consider another frame. Um, but so it's people are pretty locked in their ways. So I think like the only way to get people to try other things really is making the rewards based off of that. So I like how they did it where things scale up. Like you get good. I mean, you get a lot of stuff for doing this. So that's one thing. Is this mission is, while it is very difficult, it is very worth it. Like I have gotten, you know, I mean, you just get a ton of stuff, right? You get Archon shards, melee arcanes, even the melee arcane adapter, like those. I mean, that's like 50,000 standing or something. So even those are worth it. That's like basically 20 plat. Um, so yeah, the Phosphor is like kind of whatever. Like I don't, it doesn't really matter. Honestly, the Lanthorns are probably more worth it than the Phosphor because those are harder to get. But yeah, so very difficult. Rewards are worth it. I'm kind of okay with the loadout, like quote unquote restrictions. That being said, I can't really talk because I got Kullervo both weeks, and we all know Kullervo is an absolute monster. So I didn't get like amazing melee weapons though. So this week I had the Prisma Oma. Last week I had the Guandao Prime. So pretty good melee, but like they don't really have like that much heavy attack synergy with Kullervo. So I definitely wouldn't. Those wouldn't be my first choice weapons. And I did have to like I had to update my Guandao Prime build to do the mission well and stuff like that. So so that brings me to the difficulty portion of this. So so this is not Steel Path. That is something like very critical. Um, so there is this empowered enemies thing. So a lot of this is similar to like Archon hunts or like Steel Path, honestly. So in Archon hunts, there's like respawn limitations, there's consumable limitations, there's the empowered enemies modifier, but the important thing here is it only increases health and shields, not armor. So, and we all know like the real tanky enemies in Warframe have a ton of armor. And thank God this doesn't scale armor because you can't armor strip like the Necromechs and holy shit, those things are tanky as hell. So if this did scale up armor, I genuinely think these missions would be almost impossible. So so a lot of the difficulty comes from one, restricting your loadout, and then two, the modifiers. Because frankly, like a level 400 normal enemy, even though it has extra health, like this is basically like it's a little harder than like a steel path incursion, right? Steel path enemies are going to be way tankier because of the armor scaling, and they're probably going to do about as much damage. Um, I mean, the enemy density seems extremely high in these missions, so you can take like a crap ton of damage, and also the modifiers can increase the damage you take by a lot as well. So overall, the modifiers haven't been like too bad. It's kind of similar to like the key glyphs from the Netracell missions. Some of them are pretty rough though, like 75% less ammo. That really pushes you towards like a battery weapon or using your melee more. I think that like there's a few that are pretty rough. So I think like gear embargo is pretty rough because if you one way to like get around the loadout restrictions that people have been mentioning is like the void rig is really strong. Like the void rig will rip through level 400 enemies. It doesn't matter if they have extra health. And using the void rigs too, which I don't remember the name, but it's basically like Iron Skin almost. Um, if you have a modded, well built void rig necromech, like you can just destroy these missions with that. But that hinges on you not having gear embargo. So gear embargo can be pretty rough if you're trying to rely on your necromech. The other one that's pretty tough, I don't remember the name. It was like last week. You couldn't go into operator, right? So like you can't use Unairu to get prime sure-footed. You can't use Unairu to armor strip. You can't like do anything with your operator, right? So that was actually kind of rough. So I had to kind of change things up a little bit. I had to use, a frame that didn't care about prime sure-footed, which, Kalervo had. Whatchamacallit, he has overguard, so he doesn't care anyways. But then some of the modifiers are literally nothing. Like, okay, puncture status effects, whatever. Like it doesn't really matter. Like, who cares that this is gonna do nothing to you? Now, there are some combinations of modifiers that can be pretty nasty. Let me see. Okay, yeah. So this one, these vampiric luminous. Um, so these drain your health and energy. They're immortal, right? So last week I had a mission where I had energy exhaustion, vampiric luminous, and which I don't think I have it this week. Oh yeah, and the myopic munitions. So the myopic munitions is enemies are immune unless you're close to them. But if you have energy exhaustion, you have to get close to enemies to damage them, so you're going to be losing energy. And then on top of that, you have the vampiric luminous, and normally you can just kite these things around, but I had a mission where I had the myopic munitions, vampiric luminous, and energy exhaustion in the same mission. And this was last week. And the options that I had were like Titania, Valkyr, and Kullervo. And I originally wanted to use Titania because I was like, oh, Titania should just rip through these enemies. She's like practically immortal. Like she's whatever. Like that should work out really well. And like I went into the mission solo and I immediately like my energy was just gone. Like I couldn't do anything because I had to fly close to the enemies to damage them, and then like between the energy exhaustion and the vampiric luminous, and the fact that Titania is a exalted frame, so she's constantly draining energy anyways. I literally could not sustain the energy to play that frame. So I was like, okay, well, that's obviously not going to work. So that's when I switched to Kalervo. But yeah, so that's why this week, because I'd already done it at 37 last week, and I don't care about this 50 Phosphor, I dropped energy exhaustion. Because I'd already experienced this combo of energy exhaustion and vampiric luminous, and it was rough. So, yeah, as some of these could be definitely implemented a little better. like the alchemical invulnerability. Um, as far as I could tell, there's like nothing showing you what kind of amphor you need to throw at the enemies to break their invulnerability. So that was like really annoying because like me and my like so I did it in a group this week, and not like a pre-made group. I just went in randomly, and like you know it was really annoying. We kind of just ignored the invulnerable enemies because you didn't know how to break their shields. You would just have to pick up amphors and chuck it at them, and hope it was the right one. Now maybe there was some kind of visual indication that I was just missing. It seemed like nobody on my team could tell what element the barrier was. So that was pretty annoying. So if there is some kind of visual indication, DE definitely needs to make that more obvious. So yeah, I think the actual enemies in these missions are not that hard. I think it's really like and I think the loadout thing is not too bad. Like because the enemies aren't that bad, you can and you have a flex, point, right? You can either drop a modifier or not use one of these loadout things. So you can get kind of screwed by certain combinations of modifiers, though. So that's really what you want to look out for. And I will say, I was last week we didn't have the assassination. I was dreading getting the assassination because I thought it was going to be really hard, and holy shit, that was hard. Um, I would not be surprised if a lot of people just do not complete this mission this week. It was very difficult. So I think I was like 80 or 85% of the group's damage on Kullervo for the assassination mission, and basically my entire team was dead. I think one person managed to like survive, and I kind of just had to stop rezzing people because otherwise I wasn't gonna kill the boss. So yeah, it was pretty rough. The other thing, I think the necromechs are like okay, so fortified foes. The Guardian Eximus Necromechs do not fuck around. Those things are absolute beasts. So, if you can, um, you probably want to have one weapon that's good at killing Necromechs. So basically, like they pretty much take no damage from status effects. So you want just like high crit weapon that can target their weak points. Um, they can't really be armor stripped either. So good luck. You kind of just have to like almost brute force them down. So yeah, those things are really monsters. Um, so this mission was hard with the vampiric luminous things because for anybody who hasn't done this particular mission yet, um, the fragmented tide is like, I mean, it's not that hard of a boss fight, but it does summon ads throughout the fight. So a lot of like enemies come in, and in this particular version, almost all of those like additional enemies are Eximus units. A lot of them are Guardian Eximus units. And you have these Luminous things wandering around while you're fighting the boss, draining your health and energy. So, like, this fight was brutal. I think this is. I think it was much harder than the 60i Steel Path boss. And the reason I say that is because the 60i Steel Path boss was basically just a bullet sponge. You could go into that fight with Revenant and an Incarnon for infinite ammo, and you were going to kill it eventually. Like, Revenant could just, yes, it took Mesmer Skin off, but you could just rolling guard, recast Mesmer Skin, put on Energy Nexus, so you would always have energy to do that, and you weren't going to die, you were eventually going to kill it. This boss was like, there was a shit ton of damage going out in this fight. It was absolutely insane. There were there was like a Guardian Eximus Hollow Vein, like that worm enemy that pulses magnetic and goes into that damage reduced state. It was hard. It was very very hard. So luckily my group was able to tough it out. But I think they definitely were able to come up with legitimately difficult missions. And like you're probably gonna see people like I've seen people like on Reddit and whatever being like, "Oh, this is so easy." Like like okay, let's not become toxic about this mission like people are about Eidolons. This mission is hard as shit. Okay? Anybody who's like, "It's so easy." Like it's not. All right? Let's just be real. Like if you're saying it's so easy, you're just being an elitist prick. Okay? Like even someone like me who I have every single frame, I have every single weapon except for like two that I just don't care to get because I'm never going to use them. Um, I have thousands of hours in the game. I have every mod. I have every arcane. It was still hard, you know. So if it's difficult, now it wasn't impossible. Like I was able to do it. I could probably do these missions solo. But if it's even a little hard for me, for like a normal Warframe player that doesn't have 5,000 hours in the game, these missions are borderline impossible. So, I was it did annoy me a little bit that people were being like a little elitist about these missions. Like, yeah, for me it wasn't that hard, but I also have literally everything in the game. Not everybody has that. The vast majority of Warframe players do not have that. The average MR is like 12 or something, which is like really low. Like MR 12 is like, I don't know, 20% of the way to legendary rank 4, probably lower than that actually. It's probably more like 15%, 10% with how MR scales. So you don't have like the average player does not have much in their arsenal. Now, this mission is not tailored towards average players, but average players might still try to interact with it. So, if people are saying this is really hard, it probably was really hard for them. So don't be a dick. Um, so yeah, so I think overall, this is good. I like that it's like, I mean, this is the first time in Warframe where I actually felt like challenged. I mean, just to be real, like Warframe, as long as you like farm the stuff and you have the good stuff, 99.9% of the content is completely trivial. The game has been power crept into oblivion. There's so many strong frames, there's so many strong weapons. Um, this is the first time in like a really long time. Maybe when I was like trying to like speed run Profit Taker and like refining my builds for that, like it felt I had like a similar feeling. Um, and the 60i Murmur boss is pretty tough as well. But yeah, so I like that this is hard. I don't want them to nerf it. It's okay that this is tailored towards end game players because look at the rewards. Like the big thing you're getting out of this is the Archon shards, right? And Archon shards are not for like, I mean, yeah, of course anybody can use them, but Archon shards are kind of like the cherry on top, you know? That's what takes builds to like not even the next level, right? That's just like makes some builds absolutely ridiculous, you know? Like you can basically it's almost like having like multiple extra mod slots, especially when you're looking at the Tau Forge shards. And some of the effects on the Tau on the shards are like unique. You can't even get them with mods, like full stripping with corrosive and stuff like that. So, but you don't need any of. I mean, frankly, you don't really need the Archon shards at all. But only like quote unquote veteran players are not only, but veteran players are going to get the most out of Archon shards because their builds are already like so maxed out. The shards are just adding that like extra layer of insanity. Um, so yeah, I definitely appreciate being able to get a lot more Archon shards. That's really nice. You don't have to be as stingy. It kind of eases the pain of the 50 bile removal like fee for taking Archon shards out of a frame. So that's really nice. Um, so now in terms of like building a frame or weapon, because I'm sure that people are going to try and do this mission that like maybe aren't quite super prepared. Just to be like last week and this week, I did do it in just a random public group, and I'm pretty sure like every single mission I was like 80% of the group's damage, and everybody else was dying. It's whatever, I mean, I'm glad to help other people. Um, so I would say the best thing you can do is prioritize living in your build. Like just live. Like, try to get the best build on whatever weapon you have possible. But if you're like making a frame build just for Deep Archimedea, just prioritize survival. You know, like use, and there's a couple combinations. Like, it's pretty tough to health tank through these missions. Frankly, I think like Anaros and Corvex can probably health tank through these missions, but that's probably about it. Like, I think like some of the other like kind of high HP frames like Grendel and Lavos, Nidus would probably be fine with his mutation stacks, um, but yeah, like I would highly advise against trying to health tank in these missions. Now if we let me just go to like I don't know, I can probably just use this frame. So what I would like advise is just use like almost every single. Oh geez, this I didn't. Whatever. Let me just go to Limbo. I never play Limbo, so I should have a free slot on him. Yeah, perfect. Okay. So every frame, almost every frame, can use some kind of shield gating build. Now, now the mods I'm about to show and the arcanes I'm about to show are expensive or are like late game items, so you might not have them. But if you use like primed redirection, adaptation, fast deflection, arcane aegis, and where is it? Like something like this. So I mean, honestly, like you could even use rolling guard if you want. Like this setup will really get you far in terms of survivability. Um, Now, the reason I have primed redirection is a lot of frames have enough base shields that primed redirection will get them to that almost to that 2.5 second cap for shield gating. Now, I would advise against the catalyzing shields route unless you're on a frame that you absolutely are 100% confident you can utilize this mod, because you have to be constantly casting abilities to refresh your shields. And there are a lot of energy drain modifiers in Deep Archimedea. And like there's the Hollow Vein that will drain your energy. So I wouldn't like overly rely on having energy in that game mode because you can't use equipment. I mean, you can, but it has a 3-minute cooldown, so you can use it like once per mission. So you're not gonna be able to spam energy pads or anything like that. So I would personally go the primed redirection route, and this kind of turns like almost every frame into like mini Hildren, right? You got rolling guard, adaptation, fast deflection is actually I think this mod is really 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 good. It's very cheap, it's only 7 capacity. You can also another thing you can do, because if you like, because I know a lot of people are they might be trying to use frames they don't normally use and they don't have a lot of forma in because of the loadout restrictions on the mission. You can use, so if you look at adaptation, the cap doesn't change. The only thing that changes when you increase the capacity or the rank of the mod is the damage resistance you get per time you get hit. So how fast it takes you to stack up to the max and how long the buff lasts. So, and it's not that huge of a difference. Like going from, max rank, dropping it down 4, you only lose 2% per hit and 4 seconds total. So a lot of times what I do is I just use a lower rank adaptation if I'm trying to save some capacity on a frame. You could go so far as to run barrier if you have it, but I'm just assuming people are probably going to want to run energize. Now this is not a limbo build, right? This is kind of just like a generic like trying to survive in Deep Archimedea build. Because frankly, like I was playing Anaros and my Anaros has like 11,000 health and a shit ton of armor, and I was still almost dying. I was testing different frames out the first week after I finished the mission, and like yeah, it can be rough. There's a lot of incoming damage in those missions. So this kind and rolling guard is kind of like optional. You can kind of like feel that out. The other thing is if you can use your operator, I mean don't don't feel bad about just using Vazarin. Like you can use Protective Sling, and you will have basically guaranteed life at least, so you won't die, and you can save other people. There's also the instantaneous revives, because honestly, like you might have to end up reviving people a lot in these missions, so don't overlook Vazarin as an option. Um, I think Vazarin is like very viable for this mission. Um, so yeah, so build defensively. Really just, I mean, you only need one weapon that really performs well, right? So just pick a weapon pick the most promising of the 9 weapon options you're offered. Hopefully, one of the frames you get is usable. And then you have one flex, right? You can drop either one loadout option or one modifier. Like here, right? So now I'm not getting 37 or 34, but if I put the modifier back on, I'll get 34. Um, Unfortunately, one thing is that like CC frames are really trash in this game mode, and it really sucks. But Rebecca and Steve did mention this in the dev short that they just had, where basically CC frames feel really bad right now because there were some CCs that would go through Overguard still, and pretty much all of those got wiped out in the this last patch. So CC frames feel really bad against Overguard, and you have things like bolstered belligerence, where all the enemies in the entire mission have Overguard. So yeah, you're gonna want to tend towards using either like damage frames or buff frames, not CC frames, which kind of stinks. That's really unfortunate, but it's just the way it is. I really hope that they adjust Overguard so it doesn't completely f over CC based warframes so badly. Like if you took like Vauban into this mission, like you would literally do nothing. Like you would just be like a complete liability, which is really unfair to people that enjoy playing those frames. So, but whereas like Trinity could actually be pretty good because you can like kind of support your team. And that's the other thing. Like, don't be like if you get like Trinity or something like that, don't be afraid of like picking Trinity and like playing like support. Like I think Warframe players have gotten so conditioned, really due to power creep, that everybody's independent. Support frames are kind of useless except for like maybe Wisp. Um, and but in this game mode, honestly, like if you get Trinity or you get, some other support type frame, and you can give your allies, shield regen or whatever, that can actually be really helpful. As if there's like if you're struggling with these missions, if you just get like one person in your squad that can do damage, and all you need to do is just not die and contribute like something, whether it's buffs or whatever, you'll get the missions done. I know they can be really hard, but it's definitely possible. So, I'm hoping that they iterate on this a little bit without making it much easier. I think that would kind of defeat the purpose, but I do think that there's some rough spots, like with how some of the modifiers are implemented and stuff. So we'll see what they do. They're also adding in the LOS changes and some other changes later this week, so that should hopefully make some frames a little better. And hopefully they address the whole overguard thing soon, because a lot of frames feel really bad into a lot of overguard. And these missions have a lot of Eximus units, a lot of overguard, and it kind of just feels like, we're back to the whole death is the best CC thing. Um, so yeah, so those are my thoughts on the new mode. I think they overall did a really good job. I had a lot of fun with them. Just that feeling of like when I was in the assassination mission and it was like down to the wire. Like my whole team is dead. I'm alive trying to kill the boss. There's like 5 trillion enemies alive. My like overguard, I'm like spamming Kullervo's 2 trying to get my overguard back. It's just instantly getting depleted. It was, and I'm like, man, I've been in these missions for like a long time. Like alchemy takes a while, mirror defense takes a while. By the time I was in this mission, it'd probably been like almost an hour, right? Or probably at least like 40 minutes. So I'm like, oh my god, I really don't want to lose all that progress. So it's the first time Warframe's like kind of stressed me out a little bit. Like, like I've played a lot of like Dota and like PvP games and stuff with that where you get that feeling, but I never really get that feeling from Warframe. So that was kind of interesting. So overall, I think good job, DE. I think it could use a little improvements, but pretty good job. So let me know, what your experience was with the Elite Deep Archimedea. Did you get completely screwed over by your loadout choices or some of the modifiers? Did you think it was easy, hard, whatever? So yeah, thanks for watching, and hope you have a good day.